President of Venezuela's National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, met with Colombian Ambassador to the nation, Armando Benedetti, within the framework of the re-establishment of bilateral ties. Chile commemorates the International Day Against Forced Disappearance. And in Russia, Mikhail Gorbachev, last leader of the Soviet Union, passed away at the age of 91. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Venezuela's President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, met with the Colombian Ambassador, Armando Benedetti, in the framework of the re-establishment of bilateral ties. During the press conference, Rodriguez and Benedetti assured that the Second Commission of the Colombian Congress and the Venezuelan Parliament are working together to set a date for an interparliamentary meeting. Benedetti arrived in Venezuela last Sunday and was received by the President Nicolás Maduro Moros at the Miraflores Palace, to whom Benedetti delivered the diplomatic credentials as ambassador of Colombia in the country.
Historical relations. We have a border that has to be attended to in a consensual, coordinated, and dynamic manner, so that the people of Venezuela and Colombia who live along this border feel that relations such as those that are being undertaken now are much better than what happened in the past.
Colombian Ambassador to Venezuela, Armando Benedetti, stated that breaking relations with the Venezuelan people was a mistake.
What I have come here to say is that someone with an imaginary line may want to feel himself better or divide brothers like us. What was done to sever relations was something quite... Well, Maduro told me yesterday that I could not speak as a senator. So it was quite wrong to avoid using too many adjectives. And that is why we came here. And I'm a person of trust of President Petro, and that is why I am here.
Colombian Ambassador Armando Benedetti also met with the Minister of the People's Power for Defense, Vladimir Padrino Lopez. Both officials discussed the re-establishment of trust and binational respect. Benedetti then met with Venezuela's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez. The Colombian ambassador was also received by the Minister of Oil, Tarek El Aizami, to discuss energy cooperation in the issues between both countries. The Colombian diplomat also met with the first Vice President of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, who welcomed him at the headquarters of the legislative branch. And the Venezuelan government denounced a case of corruption attributed to former oil minister Rafael Ramirez. Tarek El Aizami, the Vice President of the Economy, and Tarek William Saab, the Attorney General of the Republic, held a meeting on Tuesday in Caracas, where the Minister of Oil is also expected to report allegations of corruption in the state-owned company Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., PDVSA. Allegations of corruption and money laundering are attributed to the administration of former oil minister Rafael Rodriguez.
Sorted to the Attorney General's office to denounce and consign all the evidence, the information, and the proofs that reveal one of the most serious corruption schemes that we have ever known in the oil industry. It is a fraud, and allow me to qualify it as a mega fraud, a mega robbery, directly orchestrated by Rafael Ramirez, ex-Minister of Energy and Oil.
The Venezuelan oil minister presented evidence of the theft of $4.85 billion in 1 year from the state-owned company PDVSA during the administration of former oil minister Rafael Ramirez.
PDVSA paid $4.85 billion. We have delivered to Dr. Tarek William Saad a certified copy of the 28 vouchers or transfers that have been made, and all the information corresponding to each account of these funds, of these $4.85 billion that have been stolen and that were stolen by Rafael Ramirez with the help of others that I have not yet mentioned.
In Colombia, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace announced the start of an investigation into criminal networks between state forces and paramilitary groups. Judge Belkis Izquierdo Torres said investigations carried out so far registered 15,710 victims of acts attributed to members of the security forces associated with paramilitarism. As for the incidents to be investigated, there are close to 56,000, which include 8,345 homicides, 2,940 forced displacements, and 1,249 cases of torture. Belkis Izquierdo acknowledged that in this large-scale case they will retake the files and evidence already collected by the justice and the peace criminal justice system. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. It's the International Day Against Forced Disappearance. Around 100 people mobilized the government headquarters, Palacio de la Moneda, and the courts to demand truth and justice for the more than 1,000 detainees disappeared in that country during the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. The demonstrators made this tour through the main streets of the Chilean capital, carrying the faces of the victims of the state, highlighting that 49 years after these events, still the military and the civilian accomplices of Pinochet refused to reveal what happened to their victims.
It cannot be that we are consolidated ex post facto about what we have and what is being done. That camera is in brief words, so that in our commitment we are tireless, and hopefully our bodies are tireless. But it is not so, not to biological impunity, truth and justice, all now and always.
In Uruguay, the Association of Secondary School Teachers stopped school activities for 24 hours in rejection of the educational reform proposed by the government of President Luis Lacalle Pou. Likewise, university teachers' unions joined the strike to demand a larger budget for higher education. Teachers from both student unions denounced that the educational reform promoted by the executive, the branch, does not provide room for negotiation and participation. In this context, they defend that students have the right to quality education with the conditions created by the scholarships that allow the most vulnerable to have access to education. More educators and students from different provinces are expected to join the strike in the coming days. In Argentina, municipal workers' movements in the province of Buenos Aires protested for better salaries, while expressing their support for Vice President Cristina Fernández. On Tuesday, demonstrators said they spoke with the Minister of Labor in order to find solutions regarding wages. Citizens also took advantage of the mobilization to show their support to the Vice President Cristina Fernández and rejected the judicial and media persecution against her. They also condemned the repression exercised by the police of Buenos Aires against last Saturday's mobilizations in support of the Vice President. And this Tuesday, retirees and pensioners mobilized to Argentina's Congress in support of Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. Demonstrators raised their voices in defense of democracy, the Republic, the National Popular Inclusive, Regional and Feminist Project promoted by the national government. In this regard, representatives of the United and Organized Senior Citizens Front informed that they will remain mobilized until the judicial persecution against Cristina Fernández ends. In the United States, about 100 people gathered outside the South Carolina State House on Tuesday, chanting phrases like "my body, my right," and drawing hunks from passing carts. The South Carolina House appeared ready to vote on Tuesday on a new total ban on abortion with no exceptions for pregnancies caused by rape or incest, as Democrats joined with the chamber's most conservative members to keep the bill as restrictive as possible. Many Republicans accuse Democrats of playing politics politics as they joined conservatives to also vote down an amendment supporters said will allow abortions for women carrying fetuses with medical problems, leaving them unlikely to be born alive. 13 states have so-called trigger laws designed to outlaw most abortions when the U.S. Supreme Court threw out the constitutional right to end a pregnancy in June. And Telesur will dedicate its coverage of the Football World Cup Qatar 2022 to the figure of Diego Armando Maradona, who accompanied our crew in the last 2 World Cups. With the football star, we also toured our continent with the show The Sur de Viajero. We want this tribute to have its own music. With that in mind, we invite you to write or compose a song for Telesur's coverage of Qatar 2022 Football World Cup. It must be an original song, never recorded before or published in any media, and free of legal attachments. Record the song in any format, WAV, MP3, even with your cell phone, and send it as an attachment to comunicaciones@telesurtv.net with the following information: author's name, nationality, and the name of the song. The closing date of the call of entries is for September 10th, 2022. A jury of prestigious musicians and composers from the region will select the winning piece. The prize will be the recording of the song, a video clip, and the wide diffusion of the work. 1 week after the closing of the call, Telesur will announce the results. And let us go over 2 of the 4 musicians who will choose the winning song. Juanito Ayala is a Chilean songwriter and singer. Thanks to his 15 years of musical career, he has become one of the leaders of Chilean music with social and dancing themes. He started as one of the main voices of the band Juanafe, which made his work known not only in his country but also in South America, Mexico, and Europe, popularizing songs like Callejero, La Maquinita, and in his solo career, songs such as Tanta Música, Dos Veredas, and his most recent single, El Gatillo, and Lo Comido y Lo Bailado. Hits that make him one of the most charismatic and representative faces of the Chilean music scene. Mexican rapper Rodrigo Lopez, also known as Lengua Alerta, comes from Nahualpan, a city located on the outskirts of Mexico City. From a very young age, he joined rock, garage, and punk bands. In the middle of the 90s, he joined the rock band Tijuana No, a band that from the beginning was characterized by strong political and social criticism. Already starting his career as a solo artist, Lengua Alerta gets fully involved with the sound system culture, originally from Jamaica, performing in public spaces, urban and rural stages to take his lyrics and sound to cultural forums, as well as to indigenous and autonomous communities. Among his most outstanding singles are Aurora, Tu Nombre, and A Recuperar. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and the first and last President of the USSR, died on Tuesday at the age of 91. According to TASS news agency, Gorbachev was hospitalized at the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic at the request of his doctors and had been under medical supervision ever since. On the eve of his death, Gorbachev arrived at the hospital for hemodialysis as he was suffering from kidney problems. His death was reported on Tuesday night on a statement that said he had died in the evening after a serious and prolonged illness. A divisive figure, Gorbachev's supporters credit him with having played a key part in bringing about an end to the Cold War, while opponents accuse him of aiding in the fall of the Soviet Union and a major loss to Moscow's prestige and global influence. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990 and is considered one of the most prominent political figures of the 20th century. The first ship carrying grain from Ukraine for people in the hungriest parts of the world has docked at the Horn of Africa's port of Djibouti, as areas of East Africa are badly affected of deadly drought and conflict. Food security experts call it a drop in the bucket for the vast needs in the world's hit-hard countries of Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia, the nations where the first shipment is going. But the flow of grain from Ukraine from other hungry parts of the world is expected to continue, with another ship departed on Tuesday for Yemen. A deal reached by Ukraine and Russia is allowing ships carrying grain to leave key Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea.
It left the Ukraine 2 weeks ago, where it loaded grain from those ports in the Ukraine as part of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and it arrived this morning in Djibouti, and it's currently offloading 23,000 metric ton of wheat. That's enough wheat to feed 1.5 million people for about a month, and that food is destined for the populations, the vulnerable populations in Ethiopia, in the south and southeast, populations that are highly affected by drought, as well as the north of Ethiopia.
On Monday, the United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator in Yemen, David Grizzly, leads on efforts, the UN efforts, for the last $14 million needed to try and prevent a stricken oil tanker from triggering a disaster off in the country that could cost $20 billion to clean up.
Nations ask donors that have pledged funds to disperse them urgently, and others that are in a position to contribute to do so as soon as possible, because the emergency operation cannot be implemented until the necessary funding is received. Less than $10 million of the funding pledge has been dispersed by donors for the operation so far.
Likewise, David Grizzly said that if actions are not taken, the ship will eventually break apart and a catastrophe will happen, just as the Alaska 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster, one of the world's worst ecological catastrophes, and the safer contains 1.1 million barrels of oil, 4 times the amount of oil that was spilled in 1989.
The FSO Sapphire continues to decay and could break up or explode at any time. The volatile currents and strong winds from October to December will only increase the risk of disaster. If we don't act, the ship will eventually break apart and the catastrophe will happen. It's not a question of if, but when. The result would potentially be the 5th largest oil spill from a tanker in history. It would unleash an environmental, humanitarian, and economic catastrophe.
United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, expressed to the Security Council her deep concern about the threat to security posed by the ongoing stalemate and continued delays in implementing the electoral process in Tripoli, Libya. DiCarlo said the threat materialized a few days ago when Tripoli was again the theater of violent clashes between army groups supporting Abdulhamid al-Dabeibah and Fari Bashaga, respectively. The high UN official said the clashes appeared to be another attempt of pro-Bashaga forces to enter the capital from the east. However, she said they were blocked by pro-Dabeibah forces at Slayton, around 160 kilometers east of Tripoli, and were forced to retreat following clashes. Attempts by other pro-Bashaga armed groups to advance on the capital from the west and the southwest were similarly repelled. Now we move on to other topics. Pakistan's Foreign Minister spokesperson Asim Iftikhar said the country is facing a colossal catastrophe in the aftermath of devastating floods. Speaking to reporters in New York via a video link from Pakistan, Iftikhar said the flooding has impacted over 33 million people, with more than 1,100 people killed and 1,600 injured. The spokesperson also said that the loss of homes, livestock, and farmland has been equally devastating. The United Nations and Pakistan issued an appeal on Tuesday for $160 million in emergency funding to help millions affected by the record-breaking floods.
Facing a catastrophe that is simply colossal. The loss of life and devastation, they are huge and they are widespread and they are countrywide. And clearly, this is yet another case of climate-induced disaster. It's very clear that this is climate-related. And for Pakistan in particular, I think this is an occasion to also note that while we are amongst the least contributors to the global carbon footprint, we are amongst the most vulnerable.
Telesur English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And now you can also follow us on TikTok account at Telesur English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.